here is the issue of Brain-Mind Bulletin on Prigozhin's grappling with the time paradox, as it's called.
What date is that?
The date is, if it's a special issue, May 1994. So this is a month old. And the conclusion that's coming out of his work is that nature is not governed by eternal laws, which is a very big piece of news in science, because it has been the assumption really since the Greeks that there is a higher world of mathematical perfection, and that somehow the world of physical appearance and substance is a shadow in Plato's formulation, or a reflection of this higher, perfect, eternal world, which is mathematical in its foundation and best conceived somewhat like the mind of God. And so then the task of science has been to elucidate these eternal, unchanging rules, and to place nature in the context of this system of rules for purposes originally of philosophical contemplation, and for the last 1,000 years or so for purposes of technological manipulation. Well, a number of us over the past 15 years have been very restless with this idea. It seems to be naive philosophically, and it seems also not in congruence with the observable facts of nature. Prigozhin made his reputation by attacking the second law of thermodynamics, which was thought to be the most inviolate law in nature, the law that systems run down, and that order and energy is dissipated ultimately as heat, and that disorder is the destiny of all organized systems. Prigozhin showed that this is not true in classical chemical systems. He established what is called the principle of order through fluctuation, which is a situation where, for reasons not immediately apprehendable in classical chemical dynamics, a system will spontaneously mutate to a higher state of order. And we're not talking biological or social systems, we're talking just simple organic systems, chemical systems, I mean. Life is a very, very dramatic example of what Prigozhin was talking about. We have genes in us that occur in flatworms, absolutely undifferentiated from their expression in the human body. Well, those genes are arguably 3.5 billion years old. Since the life of an ordinary star, not our star, which is a slow-burning and special kind of star, but ordinary stars have an order of existence of 600 million years. 1/6 the known rate of the persistence of life on this one piece of real estate. So life is a phenomenon that violates the second law of thermodynamics on a planet-wide scale with ease for 3.6 billion years. Fascinating. And social systems similarly perturb themselves into higher states of order. A gene, the ordinary mechanisms of Darwinian evolution have to do with taking chaotic events, such as mutation, in other words, events which represent a degradation from an ideal state of order, and somehow using these stumbles, we could say, to become great leaps forward. a curious ability to, take lemons and make lemonade. That seems to be what biology is doing there. Well, I know Prigozhin only slightly and formally. My great intellectual comrade in arms is Rupert Sheldrake. And Rupert, this is his bailiwick as well, because what he is saying, in a slightly different voice, is that nature is a process which, in a sense, predicts itself. In other words, he's saying that the way things have happened in the past is the way that they most tend to happen in the present and the future. This is not a scientific idea at all. It's a very unscientific idea. In its most extreme examples, it appears absurd. And he, being a clear thinker, is willing to push the theory into the domain of the absurd examples. What do I mean by absurd examples? I mean that if you believe this concept, then teaching rats in Australia to run a certain kind of maze should make it easier for rats in England to run that same maze. Rats in England should run it faster once it's run by rats in Australia. In other words, what he's saying is the mere act of something happening. It sort of digs a ditch through the epistemic murk of causality. This is what the biologist C.H. Waddington called a creode. A creode is a developmental pathway. And once you have one, a process will tend to run in that pathway rather than on one side of it or on the other. And so what Rupert's theory carries as an implication is what Prigozhin now proclaims, which is that what we thought were eternal natural laws are simply something more like habits of nature. And that nature begins in a highly undetermined state, where the set of possible creodes, that word which means developmental pathway, the set of possible creodes radiating out from the origin point approaches some enormous high number. But things must undergo the formality of actually occurring. Whitehead's phrase. Things must undergo the formality of actually occurring. So out of these many possible developmental creodes, a path will be chosen. This is called now in physics a symmetry break. And in theory, these symmetry breaks are not determined. They could occur anywhere. Now what I mean by that is a common one is, and don't hold me to the numbers, but I believe the electron is 1,860 times heavier than the proton. No theory can account for this. There is nothing apparently magical about this being 1,800 so forth times heavier than the proton. So it's called a symmetry break. In the original mix of possibilities, the universe just developed. Symmetry, as in tiger, tiger, burning bright in the forest of the night. What immortal hand or eye can frame thy fearful symmetry? That kind of symmetry, or symmetry, as we from the cattle towns of western Colorado say.
How does Darwin fit into this as far as the theories of evolution? I mean, are you basically implying that an accidental, chaotic dance is going on in regards to how life is unfolding? There is no rhythm, there is no reason, there is no rhyme to the unfoldment of evolution as we know it?
Well, certainly that was Darwin's idea. It's not necessarily mine. See, since the 19th century to the 20th century, the word chaos has actually changed. In the 19th century, chaos meant disorder. And the gene, in a sense, you could almost say that Darwin was the first chaos theorist, because they discovered, the people, Darwin and his school, that you could take two processes which are both random, and that by running these two random processes together, you could attain striking examples of order and symmetry and beauty. And this, to them, this proved that God is not necessary. They said, look, no God, nothing, no God up the sleeve, just here is random mutation, no mystery here. Here is natural selection, no mystery here. I shuffle the deck together, and here I get peacocks, harlequin beetles, gray whales, and human beings. And no God necessary. But and we've talked about this a lot, so I don't want to spend too much time on it. What they were obsessed by in the 19th century was the elimination of purpose, which goes to your question. They were totally against the idea that there is a plan, God's plan, because they were very concerned to continue the tradition of free will that they inherited from French rationalism, and they felt they were holding the line against the Church of England. In a way, this brings me to what I wanted to talk about today, which was, there are many paths into this, but about the paradigm shift. And we've talked now for a few minutes about natural law versus the idea that the universe is some kind of evolving organism. And I want to talk about two opposed sets of terms. The old paradigm and what it implied and how it worked, and the new paradigm and how it's different and what it implies and how it works. Because I think we're getting close to pay dirt on this great change of consciousness thing that everybody is waiting to have happen, that enough data is accumulating, enough global web weaving is happening, that we're close to criticality on having the new paradigm emerge. Perhaps Prigozhin's little announcement is the beginning of that.